Hello, and welcome to a really exciting, really challenging video on thesis crafting for senior English. This requires quite a grasp of essay writing to begin with. This is, I would say, an advanced skill for high school, definitely. To begin with, I'll firstly rule out misconceptions about what a thesis is. It can be used to refer to a doctoral dissertation, which is a hundred or several hundred at time pages um, essay, basically, given at the end of a 4 year degree. Here, this is something totally different. We are going to define it as the Oxford Dictionary does, a statement or theory that is put forward as a premise to be maintained or proved. And so this is really the what your essay is about, what you're trying to communicate, what you're trying to prove. And also, a thesis can sometimes in high school English be used to refer to a single sentence that that really condenses all of those ideas together. Usually, you find those in the introduction and in the conclusion. This is the informal answer to what your essay is about. Essays aren't about texts, they're about ideas and the ideas within those texts. So, with that out of the way, I will also say the function of this. This is the center of your essay. Without a very clear thesis, your analysis becomes a bit loose and it doesn't have a greater purpose. You can be able to very critically read a text and very critically analyze the various aspects of those texts. Uh, but the purpose of your analysis should always be proving a grand idea about, that is taken from the text or maybe something that you are bringing to the text. That is the purpose of your analysis. Onto these three, what I consider to be the essential parts to a thesis. And these can work really well in reflection on your own thesis. These can work really well when you're communicating with your teacher what parts of your thesis need to be clarified or what parts are certainly hitting the mark. There are three aspects, I would argue. The first aspect is probably the most challenging aspect, profoundness. This means your idea is fresh and zesty, it's something new, um, and it takes a bit of insight from you to understand something interesting about the text. So, this is uh, I'm going to call it a fresh idea. This can sometimes be difficult when you don't know what is fresh and what has already been quite established about your the text or the ideas that you're running through. So that's where communicating with your teacher is really important to trust their judgment and experience with those ideas. Another way that you can bolster the profoundness of your thesis is to bring a critical lens to your thesis. So, this could be feminism, post structuralism, Marxism, bringing those very, uh, at sometimes contemporary, at some points contemporary, um, whatever they are, they're usually rigorous, established theories. Critical lens is a great way to enhance the profoundness of your thesis. Okay. The second point, relevance. This is if your how your thesis relates to the question and how it relates to the module. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what is in which module, but those 2 points are key, and we will go through examples of how you can work with the question. This probably means you're going to adapt the terminology of the question, or you are going to shift the terminology, not too much, but you are going to shift it into something that you are happy to talk about. So, two things here relation to the question I'm just going to write a big Q, and also relation to the module. The final point, I think this one most people nail. It is anchoring. How well does this relate to the text, and can this idea be proven with the text? Uh, Sometimes this doesn't happen. Oops, sorry about that. Sometimes this doesn't happen. So I think it's important to include and also to celebrate that this is something that most people are quite good at. This is relation to the text. Now, with those points, I'm going to go through some worked examples. I've given two examples for each of these points. One is on the weaker side and one is on the stronger side. That's not to say that the stronger one is perfect, and that's not to say the weak one is totally flawed. First example, we're going to start with profoundness. Excuse some of the messiness and chaos that's going on with the board. The first point, profoundness. Romeo and Juliet cautions its universal audience of the catastrophic danger of infatuation/love, both similar things. I would put this one as on the weaker side of profoundness. It's probably the first thing that a person would notice after viewing Romeo and Juliet, and it's a little bit shallow. I would say other aspects of Romeo and Juliet are more important than uh, the simple love between two characters. And also on the characters, to bring in the anchoring a little bit, love isn't strong between many of the characters in Romeo and Juliet. You could make an argument, but it would be more difficult. The second example, catalyzed by juvenile love, Romeo and Juliet extrapolates the ultimate destination of tribalist self identification. This one's a bit more interesting. Tribalism, uh, I would say, is the main point of Romeo and Juliet. So this isn't a um, ex- sorry, this thesis isn't like mind-boggling, but it is more complex than just pointing out love. And if you notice carefully, that love is part of it. Love catalyzes this ultimate destination of destruction and death and families being torn apart and coming together a little bit. Also, I like that tribalism has been brought into this thesis statement, and it gives you something more to unpack. How are we going on time? Oh my god, almost 9 minutes. So, bringing in terminology and new ideas, new concepts will certainly make your thesis more profound. The second point, relevance. I've provided the question here. This was from the 2022 HSC. How does author represent emotions arising from human experiences through the features of the type of text? The first example, emotions are the downfall of all in Shelley's Frankenstein. Hmm, it's okay, but you kind of miss out on human experiences. We've only focused on emotions, and the relationship between emotions and human experiences is important to this question. So this thesis isn't faring so well in terms of relevance. This thesis, a bit longer. Shelley represents not only the universality of human experiences, but also the transcendence of emotions inspired by these experiences. This is a lot closer to the question. Uh, and also, I want to say these examples are meant to highlight just one of the aspects. In terms of profoundness, it's okay. But in terms of relevance, this is very clearly relevant. The transcendence of emotions could be interesting because you're talking about things that aren't human, things that are connecting people um, on more of a spiritual level. And also the universality of human experiences. You could argue that the monster or the creation, however you want to label that part, that character in the text, um, you can make an argument that that shows that human experiences are not something that just humans experience, but it's something that everything experiences. And through our privileged perspective of being humans, we ascribe them as human experiences. On to our last aspect now, the anchoring. How well does your thesis relate to the question? Central to the Raven is the fear of death. Really simple, um, but I don't think it really relates to the Raven. Um, I think that's more someone that would generally think a Gothic text has something to do with death. There is um, like the history of a death in that text, but I don't think that's the central part. And you would have to make a very tough argument about um, that being central. The second example is central to the Raven is the torture of absence. I think that's a much more straightforward argument that you could make. It's about the absence of Lenore, the absence of a proper reply. Uh, it's the absence of the room. The room is really bare. Um, that very much relates to the Raven. Okay, I'm going to pause there. We've moved through a lot. Um, I hope this has made sense. Using these three aspects and this terminology is a really powerful tool to grapple with something that can be very complex when developing your own analytical pieces in English. All the best. Thanks.